Oh, yes. Welcome into Snow the Goalie, the Only Flyers podcast, the People's Podcast, Players Podcast, Prognosticators Podcast, Pedialyte Podcast, the Only Flyers podcast. I'm Russ Joy on Twitter, @JoyOnBroad. Next to me is Anthony SanFilippo, who you can find on Twitter, @AntSanFilippo. You can't find the show right now on Anthony's Twitter because he doesn't pay for Premium X, which we're going to have to rectify at some point. You can't find us right now on the Snow the Goalie Twitter account because that also requires premium. But we are live on YouTube. We are live on my Twitter feed and Bundy's Twitter feed, but not the Snow the Goalie account. If you haven't already,
that's something new.
I'm dead serious. I told you this. I warned you in advance. Anyway, it doesn't matter. As we always tell people, it's a great time to subscribe over on YouTube. If you haven't done so already, now is the time. You can subscribe over on youtube.com @Snow the Goalie. It's a great day. It's a great day. We are doing this show. Bundy may be popping on now. He may pop on to do something tomorrow morning. We are still awaiting final confirmation from him. As it is the summer, the three of us are almost impossible to track down at the same time. But we figured it's a big enough day. We have to talk about the re-signing of Erik Johnson, so we are here to do... No, I'm just kidding. Matvei Michkov is stateside. Travis Konecny signs a contract. Do we think it's a good contract? Do we think it's a bad contract? We're going to get into all of that. We will go to as many questions and comments and concerns as we can on the live stream. But if you are listening after the fact in the podcast feed, do what somebody did this week and go leave a 5-star rating on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. More importantly, go leave a 5-star review. We have one this week, and an out-of-state listener who left a review. And so we will get to that in a little bit because as we've been saying now for quite a while, please go back, leave the 5-star reviews. We'll read them on the show. Love us, hate us, doesn't matter. 5 stars, and we'll read it on the show. Ant, how are you? What's been going on in your life? You know, I hear that you're even busier than normal. Yeah,
it's ridiculous. I mean, what the Flyers don't think to consult with me and check with me to see what my schedule is to start doing all this stuff when this happens.
The audacity.
I mean, I got a lot going on, man. You know, I got a wedding is less than 2 months away. You know, the debut of Rev Russ. It's less than 2 months away now. It's coming. It's coming. We're in the countdown at this point. Obviously, I've been doing a lot of Philly stuff. I've been teaching a class, and then I have my regular, day job. So I mean, it's been nuts. And of course, this all happens. I was in the middle of a class today, and my phone starts blowing up, and I'm like, oh man, now. They couldn't have waited till Monday. My class ends tomorrow. If they would have just waited till Monday, it would have been just fine. But no, I was like, this sucks. But anyway, what are you going to do?
We have a lot to get into because you and I have been on opposite sides of the fence here. Bundy kind of fence sits on the Konecny deal.
Can I do something before we get to it?
Please do.
Brian Knowlton points this out. And the hat's not backwards. Are you okay? And there's a reason for this, Brian. There's a reason for this. I purposely went with a front-facing hat tonight just so our troll boy, Evan, doesn't sit here and rip me for wearing my hat backwards. It's bad enough.
You can't let the commenters get to you, Ant. You can't.
Bad enough when he comes in here and he starts giving crap to everybody else. Last thing we need is him to start going off about my hat. So I just went with it the normal way today. That's for you.
I'm actually a little bit sad that you let a commenter get to you. That's not how this works.
Didn't get to me.
It sounds like it got to you a little bit. A little bit. Anyway, it's a great day to do the show. It's a great night to spend together with all of the fine folks out there in YouTube, Facebook, and Xland. Let's get to, and if you haven't done so already, make sure you go share the episode link on YouTube on your Twitter and complain to Elon Musk for making everybody pay for premium accounts. Please and thank you.
I got to figure. We got to talk about that. Yeah. And by the way, guys, the reason it's not backwards is because it's not a fitted cap.
Oh, okay. Well, that's makes all the difference. Sure, because you want to make sure that your bangs don't get. You can't have your bangs going through that part of the hat. I get it. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think I see a little bit of lettuce up top. All right, it might be a little bit of baby lettuce, but I see some up there. All right. Let's get into the news of the day. Do you want to start with Michkov, or do we start with the more breaking news that really?
Let's start with.
You want to start with Konecny? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we did a Michkov show. It's just the fact that he came.
Well, he's stateside. We'll talk about it later, about his press conference and about the reaction. But okay, fine. Travis Konecny signs an extension. We had a long conversation. It's been months of, will he get the full term? Will he get the full 8 years? Will the Flyers go to the $10 million plus asking price? Will Konecny come down closer to the $8 million that the Flyers might have wanted to come to the table with? Was it going to settle at 9? Was it going to go to 9.5? And I think we've been very clear about where we stand on it. He ends up signing an 8-year deal worth $70 million. That's an AAV of $8.75 million per year. It puts him in the company of the Laines, the Reinharts, the Gensels of the world. And now that the dust has settled, are you surprised at the term and the amount of money? We're not going to talk about the other part of the contract yet, because that, I think, is another little thing we need to talk about. But on the term and the money alone, how do you feel like the Flyers did? How do you feel like Travis Konecny did?
I'm not surprised on the term at all, because there was never a doubt that this was going to be an 8-year deal. The Flyers were willing to give him the full term up front. Konecny wanted 8 years. That was always from the beginning what their deal was going to be. The only time there was ever a discussion about it being less than 8 years was when Konecny asked for the Flyers for $10 million a year, and of course they balked at that. The only thing that they were suggesting was maybe they would be willing to do that if he would be willing to take a shorter term deal. That was the only time it was ever discussed, and it was quickly said no, we want 8 years. So that kind of went out the window. Then there was a conversation that this was probably going to come in under 10, but not somewhere in the 9 to 9.25 range. Was, I think, where we last left it at the last episode when we were talking about this. And that was kind of the belief that that's where it would settle. The Flyers were able to get him down below 9, which I'm impressed considering, and Bundy, I'm sure Bundy is too, because as you know, as we remember from the last show, Konecny's agent is Bundy's agent, right? And so Bundy had been talking to Pat and Pat Morris and really kind of having a conversation of where things were. And we were kind of really all under the assumption that was the number that they would probably settle on, somewhere a little over 9. So the fact that they were able to get them to come in under 9, I think is a win as far as negotiations for the Flyers. So I am a little bit surprised by that. I am a little bit surprised that they were willing to cut back underneath $9 million. On the whole, I think it's an okay deal. I do. I think he's a good player. I think that he's worth the money, especially as you go forward with the salary cap going up, and that number really becomes a lot more palatable. It may not seem as palatable in 24-25, but I think as each progressive season goes along, it becomes more and more palatable, except for maybe the last couple years. But at that point, you're looking at who knows what the state of the league is. If Konecny's still here, maybe you find a way to move that contract, whatever the case might be. My concern with it is the thing that you wanted to hold off on, and that's the 6 year.
Can I offer, hold on, before you get there?
Go ahead,
Let me offer this. I think I've been pretty consistent at saying I think he's an $8 million a year player. Just in general, I think he's worth about 8. I worried about giving him the full term because I do not believe that, based on his size and the way that he plays, that years 7 and 8, especially of that contract, are going to look particularly good, even with the raising cap. I just don't see a scenario where he plays out the full 8 years and year 7 and 8, we say, wow, like he's managed to stay healthy and it's all been hunky-dory. That said, you managed to get him in for less than 9. There are people who are going to make the argument just on term and money alone that he's still not worth it, because if you compare him to what Laine was supposed to be, what Gensel is, what Reinhart ended up getting, we talked about why the Reinhart thing's a little bit wonky, a little bit tricky to deal with. It's still a deal that I think is palatable. It's still a contract that is okay. And that if you got him at 8.75, you got him for less than 9, maybe it's because we at some point had kind of had this idea that he was going to look for 10. And so we raised this idea of 10 is absolutely insane for the Flyers. Maybe that's kind of allowed us to level set. Getting him for less than 9, I think, is a good move. But yes, there is this other thing that's out there. And before we get to that other thing, let us welcome to the show.
Our other thing.
Our other thing. The best looking thing on the show. The guy who everybody wants to hear from. And that, of course, is Bundy. He's here. Bundy, how are you doing, you beaut?
I'm doing great, guys. I hope you can hear me good. My video looks like shat, but maybe it'll start coming into picture a little bit. Can you hear me okay?
We can. You sound absolutely great. The dulcet tones, golden pipes are sounding great. How are you feeling? We haven't talked about the part of the contract that we think everybody is going to have a problem with, but on the 8 years and $8.75 million AAV, how do you feel? Like, how did you feel when you saw those two parts of the contract?
Yeah, well,
for Travis Konecny.
I tweeted it out that I thought it was a fair deal. And when I say fair deal, that's why we have a podcast like Snow The Goalie. I can explain what I think is why it's fair. It's the whole situation is interesting from my standpoint because I've been through the contract negotiations. I've seen them happen over the years. Everything is about opportunity and situation. And so what the Flyers were up against was taking what has been really the likely player on the team who's been the face of the team, let's say, for the last year and a half, 2 years, certainly. So he's in a market where I really feel like he has become well-loved by the fan base. And the Flyers were left in a situation where, what were you going to do? They when I look at the whole thing, by giving Tippett the 6.7 or whatever that number is, you knew you had to pay TK beyond that. And let me elaborate just a little bit on it when I say that, because situation and opportunity. So he did, from his standpoint and from the numbers he's put up, he got overpaid most likely. Now my agent's probably going to kill me for saying this because we have the same agent. But again, I'm saying it because your people are going to start doing comparisons of the numbers. But part of that is also because he's in Philadelphia and he's become a commodity to this marketplace. So from that standpoint, yes, the value's fair. Should he be making more than Sam Reinhart on paper on same contract year based on comparables? Absolutely not. He scored. You got Reinhart. I mean, Reinhart's the guy that won the cup. He had the game winner in the cup, and he scored 50 goals. So
67 between the regular season and postseason, like absurd numbers, absolutely absurd.
I understand that. So what it is now is are they still saying that this is a growth contract for TK? Are they doing it on projections? Because I'll tell you what I will say now is that, okay, you got paid. Now the onus goes back onto the player. The one thing I love about Travis Konecny is his, he's a firebrand on the way he plays the game. And I think the more he plays like that, I see like the Marchand TK comparisons. TK is not Marchand. He's not, and he has not been yet in his career. Now, I'm not saying that he can't be. Absolutely, he can be that kind of a player. But Marchand's been doing that since he was a rookie. And, he became the master of it. He got a bit of his own poison this year in the playoffs from Bennett. But anyway, what I'm saying is that this contract here was one of the situations where I know that TK, if he didn't get signed, there was a lot of cap space available next year. And if you're on this Flyers side, and I have to look at it from both sides, you're the Flyers saying, man, like, what do we do? How do we get this to as close as Reinhart? Because he is a hometown kid. But this was a case where they couldn't get a hometown discount from him. They probably already feel it is a hometown discount. But I'll tell you what, he's going to have to earn that. That's a lot of money now. And, and from the standpoint of looking at the team, I love TK. I think he's going to continue to develop. But you're going to have to get more than 64 points for that to, for that to people to really wow themselves out of there. And we'll see. But I'm happy for him. He's a really good guy. I've been with him since he was a rookie when I was doing TV or radio. I can't remember, probably TV. And, he's been a really good guy. He's a good person. He's come a long way. I've enjoyed watching him mature because there's a few plays, right, Ant? Like his first 3 years, I mean, he would make plays that you wouldn't fucking make in like a men's league. Like behind the back passes to nobody. He got out of that. Go ahead, Russ.
I love that you like.
He knew it. He knew it.
I knew it when I said it. So I don't want to say it too many times. I read something that was the reason why I didn't like to swear in here, and that's how we turned it famous. But I'm not going to try to overuse that word. And you know what? And if I do use it too much, then fuck off and deal with it. That's just the way.
Yeah, here was my question for you. Here's my question for you, Bundy. You said you were going to get in trouble by Pat for saying that TK was overpaid. Looking back at it, were you ever overpaid?
Absolutely.
So Pat does a good job for his clients. Then there you go.
You know what? It's you know what? I mean, every player that played it, was going to tell you that they're overpaid. If you're being honest, right? Like, it doesn't compare to real life, but it's a hell of a great first job, as I always tell people, and I was blessed. But yeah, no, I just feel like it's you know what I'm saying, guys? I know you know what I'm saying. It's a conundrum for both sides, but it favored TK's side more than anything. And so when I say it's a fair deal, it is a fair deal, because paying him $10 million, it doesn't help anybody. It didn't help the team. Now, I know they got him on the hook for a lot of years. But when you start getting over that number, the expectation becomes where you start being compared to a Connor McDavid or to a Leon Draisaitl. And I've got news for you. I'm always been honest. He ain't those players. So let's just stop trying to go there right now. He is what he is. We love him in Philadelphia. He plays the kind of style we admire. A guy I know would have been a great teammate. And who knows, in maybe 3 or 4 years, you look at this and say it's cheap value. But again, I don't know what the NHL ceiling is for cap. I have absolutely no idea how far it goes. So,
well, he's about 9% of their cap right now.
Yeah. So anyway, again, but that's where they're at. They'll be the same position with Michkov in 3 years. There's just there was so many levels of comparison, especially with Tippett at the low.
Yeah.
And then other guys on other teams were at a high, because you can't pay him $12 million. There's just no way, right? Like at that player. So I think this number makes a lot of sense.
I want to throw it back. So this is why I always tell people to go to YouTube. It's not because we prefer one platform over another. It's just that we can put polls and everything up. So if you go over to YouTube right now, the question was posed based on term and money alone. Was this a good deal for the Flyers and Travis Konecny? Right now, 69% of the respondents say yes. 31% say no. We're going to end that poll because now we have to get to the other part, which is why we kind of framed it as based on those two parts. But then there's another element to this contract. And while even I, who was very hesitant about term, was like, hey, try to get the guy in for less than 9, I felt okay. And then I saw the part that is a Chuck Fletcher special. And then I thought, man, maybe now we know why he came in under $9 million. And that's the 6-year full no movement clause, and then 2 years of a partial no trade clause. 6 years, no movement. I have to call this how I always call it. I don't like no movement clauses. I don't like them for players. I understand that there is something to be said for getting to control your destiny. I did not ask Travis Konecny this. I almost decided to buzz in on the Zoom call today. I watched it, but I didn't buzz in. He's got young kids, has a young family, and my assumption here is you don't want to run the risk of signing this kind of deal and then having to uproot your life and your young family, is my guess. That probably has to be part of it. But I do not like no movement clauses. And my big thing here has been, if you sign him to this deal, you need to have the flexibility that in a couple of years, if things don't go to plan, you are able to potentially move him to a team that would give you something good back for him. I clearly don't like the no movement clause. Anthony, I'll go to you. And then Bundy, I want to hear from the player's perspective, especially why a guy would go for a no movement and all that. But the no movement clause, we have to assume that might be why the money was less than $9 million. Is that fair? That there's a give and take?
I think there's probably a little bit of part of that, Russ. As far as the no movement clauses and just in general, they're a necessary evil, unfortunately. While I agree with you that it does hinder teams, once that toothpaste came out of the tube, there was no way of pushing it back, right? I mean, in the sport, not in this deal specifically, but just in the sport in general. When players were first given them, that was it. Like, now they've become a key negotiating tool for agents to have for their players. So you do sometimes have to give a no movement clause just because they exist in the world. If you don't give it, another team will, right? So that kind of thing has to be part of it. I'm not a huge fan of 6 years worth of it. Like, I think that there is a concern with that, not necessarily because I worry about Konecny or not living up to the contract, or the ability to convince him to waive it when the time comes, if needed. But the reality of it is, and you said this, if for some reason something goes awry, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that your plan doesn't work. It could be something that you don't expect, where a star player gets hurt and, you have to kind of, reconsider how you're going to go moving forward. Just anything could derail a plan. At that point, you may want to move on from a certain player and try to get what you can to try and fix things, a quicker fix. And in this instance, you could still do it. You could still have a guy be willing to move his no trade clause or waive his no movement clause. It's happened, right, many times, but it certainly could limit you as well. And part of that is what I give you. And look, this trade worked out for the Flyers, but when they traded Giroux, there was one team and one team only that they could trade to, and that was it. And that was because that's what Giroux wanted. He wanted to go to Florida, and that was it. And so, they were fortunate that they got a good deal out of that. The first round pick and Owen Tippett, but you might not always get that deal, right? If a player says to you, I only want to go to this one team, well, then you may have to settle for something less than he's worth, even if it is just a rental. And so in that regard, I don't like limiting your options for that long. I think you could give him a couple years. Okay, fine. As this thing is building up and you're trying to get to the point where you want to get to. But if in year 4 or year 5, you're still not where you need to be, and then you need to say, well, hey, we need to move on from one of our better players at that point. Now I think you've kind of limited yourself a little bit. So I would have been good with it. I would have been much better with this deal if it was like 3-year or 4-year no movement clause. But going in the 6 really, to me, is where I was like, that I'm not so sure about.
I'm just going to add to that, Anthony. So just listen to really good commentary by both of you, actually. I'm totally fine with the 3 years, but that 6 years is crazy. That gives the team, and that's a great job by Pat Morris. That's a terrific job by the agent. If I'm pushing back on that, I'm saying, you know what, guys, to be fair, okay, we're paying him a lot of money, and we think 3 years is fair, because if he's going to max out, he's probably going to max out his potential in these next 3 years, right? And then if he doesn't hit the numbers that you think, or didn't, grow again to continue to take the next step, then you have flexibility to then move him, because that number might make sense for somebody at the time. And it all depends how the look of your team is, as you're growing. It may be a great fit, TK, in 2 or 3 years when the team starts shifting a little bit and changing and draft picks start becoming players. So again, I don't know. But I do not like 6 years, and maybe that's just what the deal is. Maybe that's how it goes, and there's just no, everybody understands that that's just part of the negotiation now, and there's nothing you can do about it. But in terms of fairness, especially a little protection for the team, if they were able to, I have no problem with the no movement 3 years. You got a young family, but when you start accruing close to $30 million after 3 years, I'm not too worried about how you're going to ship your family somewhere else. So I do think that's kind of a fair move. And if you are playing great and you love it here, well, then they're not going to trade you anyway if you're so good.
That's true.
Right? So anyway.
So I'm going to take this, or go ahead.
I can tell you one last thing on this. I can tell you with 100% assuredness, this was not an easy contract negotiation for both sides. There was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of stalling, progress, step back, a lot of things that took place here. I have a sense that what Bundy just said is important to point out, that this was probably part of the sticking point, the length of this no trade clause, right? Mm-hmm. And that was when he said it's a great deal by Pat Morris for his player, for his agent, for his client. It really is, because I bet you that's where they had to get a push for the Flyers to come down, for them to settle for 8.75 and not go over $9 million. A lot of that was going to have to be about locking him into not having to go anywhere for at least 6 years. And that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but that the Flyers looked at it and said, okay, that's if we're going to swallow a pill that we don't want to swallow, we'd rather it be that than impacting our AAV 6 years from now, 5 years, 6 years from now, at a higher number. So they looked at that as a better pill to swallow than the money. And so I guess you could look at it from the Flyers' perspective and say, okay, that makes a little bit of sense for them, but it's still one that's like, man, would you rather him come in and say 925 and only have 3 to 4 years?
Yeah.
Like to me, I almost would. Like I almost would pay him a little bit more and have less on the no movement clause. I personally. Agree. But when there's give and take, I think that this is kind of how it works out.
Yeah, I mean, so it takes us to a really weird spot because, I mean, I think I've articulated this to both of you today, actually, separately, but it kind of actually lumps into the other part of today's show, which is Michkov coming over and the pressure that may be placed on him, the way that the organization is already marketing him. I want to get to that in a second, but the place that I do worry, and this is just a blanket statement, so much of what the Flyers are doing right now, so much of what this rebuild is, and there are people in the comments right now, some who believe that it is a rebuild, some who believe that it's just words and not actions, and you're fair to feel how you want. I tend to lean towards not giving me good vibes right now, but the Michkov part of this is unbelievably critical because the way that this team is currently built and the way that it looks like the team could end up going this year makes me think that Michkov has to work. And he can't just be a good player. They are currently kind of setting the table that he's going to have to be great. And if he's not, I don't want to say flop. All right? Like, I don't want this to be like Nolan Patrick flop and then trigger a bunch of people who say concussions, which is true. But if Michkov just ends up being like a decent player, 25 goal, 55 point player, you're screwed. Like, just based on how things are going right now and what we know about Tortorella raising the floor, all that, you're really in a bad spot if that's all Michkov becomes. Now, if he becomes a superstar, if he becomes your franchise cornerstone, all of this is kind of like a moot point. This deal works. The way that the money's going to offset Michkov at such a low deal. Konecny, all right, fine, this money. But so much of this feels like it really does hinge on Matvei Michkov becoming a stud, a legitimate star player. And that to me it's almost like an added level of pressure. Maybe not to the player, but just from my vantage point, that's what I see. Bundy, do you think that right now, the way that they're kind of constructing this whole thing, the way that they're marketing, he's on the billboards, they did the tweet of them going to pick him up at the airport, all that. Do you think the Flyers right now are putting a real onus and kind of putting some pressure on themselves in a way that they're marketing Michkov the way that they are right now?
Yeah, you know what, Russ? I mean, I think we've been talking about this youngster for about 14 months now, right? Since they drafted him, and there's been a lot of excitement. There's a lot of unknown. You know, I'm not like Bill Meltzer, where I'm not watching Russian hockey at like 5 a.m. or whenever it's on. So, you know, I haven't had a chance to get a real big bite of the apple that is Matvei Michkov. No offense, Bill. I know you're watching. He's probably like that motherfucker. But
he's going to text you now, Bundy. He's going to text you now.
Yeah, and you know, but again, you know, he's kind of an unknown quantity, and what we've been told is from the people that have seen a lot of him, how highly skilled he is. You know, we've seen the beautiful breakaways and the shots and the nifty moves that we see the high-end talent in the NHL have. So the expectation is high. I think like anybody, and listen, we're gonna start afresh with Torts. That's how I'm looking at it right now. Lots has changed in the last 2 weeks, you know, spiritually here, and I want to make sure we have a hard reset here with Torts.
You get shot in the ear? What happened to you?
Our quad anymore. I'm not going to call him any of these little names. Moving on. But I'm saying that'll be interesting to see that relationship too. You know, what kind of a player is he? What kind of defensive positioning does he have in an NHL rink? How does he look against others? I mean, it's gonna be interesting. By all accounts, we've heard that he, you know, was like this was if the draft was all real and everything last year, and there wasn't a lot of worry around international players at the time, that he would have been the probably number 2 pick.
Yep.
That's great. But again, it's what he does here. And I think, like, I'm reading it. I think I said it before, because I want to see him just go out and play hockey this year. Do the best you can all over the ice, get back. You're going to have to. But that's what I would do. This is a year, I think, like, where the Flyers, like, I think maybe we'll see how it starts off. I think last year they caught a lot of early resistance to what people thought of this team. And I think they pushed back pretty hard, and they got themselves in a spot where they were in it all year. And it was great. But I think really now it's about the start of the year. We got a couple, TK on a new contract. Michkov's going to be exciting. How do they play the game? How is the game going to be played to them? What is special teams going to be like? There's a lot of things, but certainly a guy like Michkov will help the power play. And I'm just curious to see how he's going to grow. Do I think it's too much that the team does this? I'm going to be honest with you. It almost never will you see a president and GM pick a player up at the airport and set up a photo op for it, like that. It didn't happen. I mean, maybe Eric Lindros, when he came, but that's kind of the level of excitement. And let's be honest, guys, there's not been a lot of excitement in terms of players coming in here. Nolan Patrick was the last guy, right? Because of how high he was picked, but certainly with the talent level of this youngster here and the excitement that's around him and his excitement of wanting to play here, I don't think should be overlooked either. That's one thing that's really neat about it. He's cool. He's a pretty cool dude. He loves Philadelphia. He's already built a pretty good relationship with the very likable and easygoing Keith Jones. And so I think that those are really, really cool things to see. But again, I hope the Flyers understand that, and I think they do. I'm a dad of a 17-year-old going through college football recruiting, and I know what that's like. So as a kid that's 2 years old or coming into a pro league, there's a lot that comes with that. I hope they understand that and realize that it's more than just selling tickets at this point, even though they need to. They need this kid to be great also in 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road as well.
Yeah. The tough thing for the Flyers right now is threading that needle, Bundy, because they absolutely have to market the hell out of this kid. Because he is the future. He is going to be the face of the franchise.
Yep.
It matters a lot, right? And they're going to sell tickets and sell jerseys. There's going to be 39s everywhere in that arena next year. Like, we won't be seeing a lot of the old jerseys anymore. We're going to see a shit ton of 39s, right? Okay, They have to do that. They have to market it right. But at the same time, they have to tell everybody pump the brakes, because he is only 19 years old. He's going to be a great player, but let him grow into that player. Let him learn how to play at the NHL level. Let him become that player. It may not be year 1. It may be year 3 or 4 while he's over here. We're excited that he's here 2 years sooner than we thought, because now we can start getting him playing the way we want him to play at age 19, as opposed to at age 21 when he's played 3 years in another professional league. So they're finding the balance of that is going to be the challenge for the Flyers. That's the thing that they're going to have to figure out how to do. I don't think we can sit here and say it's going to go great or it's going to go poorly. I think we just have to sit there and say, we acknowledge that this is a tough thing to do. Let's see how it plays out. Right? I would be of the kind that says he's going to be a great player, but let's give him time. That's what I would say, right? Because I just think that young players that in general, that's what you have to say about them, But if he comes out and has the kind of season that, say, Bedard had last year for Chicago, is anybody going to be pissed off about it here? No, they'll be thrilled. They'll be thrilled if he has that kind of season, right? And he can only get better from there. So, I think you have to kind of take the season in for what it is for a 19-year-old player and see how it works. But the Flyers have to absolutely continue to push the envelope publicly with, this is our guy. This is the guy you're going to be rooting for the next 10 to 15 years.
A lot of pressure for a 19-year-old. Bundy, this comment here from Flying Lawn Chair over on YouTube. How does the locker room react to the red carpet being rolled out for a kid who hasn't proven anything yet?
It's not 1988 anymore, so I think it's fine. Like, it's not like guys would be in the room going, "Man, I'm going to get him out there today." It was like the dream team, right? When Kukoc was playing for was it the Lithuania or whatever country he's from, and they said we're going to get him, and then Pippen teamed up on him. Him and Jordan went after him in the Olympic game. But what? I think this is kind of baked into the cake, guys. I think everybody knew that he was a pretty special talent, and we'd heard his name all year. I mean, even heard the coach saying after a post game and a presser how they were preparing some of their systems for the Mad Russian. I think that's exactly how he he framed that. So interesting, again, but I'm okay with it. Like, I think, the good thing is that he's just come over here. It may not be the worst thing to feel a little bit of it this year and understand what it's like playing in the NHL with 82 games, a language still working on that clearly. So there's a lot of good coming out of this year, a year of experience for him. But I don't know what the team. We'll let you know in another month or two how the team is. What I think is what the team's going to be shaped up to be this year.
It was funny to me. I don't know if you guys saw it. There was a clip. I think it was John Clark was down at Skate Zone. And Johnny Airports usually is wherever the big players land. And I think it was the day that Michkov landed. A bunch of people were getting excited about, oh my God, he's going to land at PHL. And I had kind of heard that he was going to go to JFK. It just makes more sense with that international flight. There are more flights that come in there, more comfortable international flights. And John Clark goes down to Skate Zone. And he gets the quote from Michkov that says, like, I'm happy to be a Flyer. And then this is where I laugh as a language guy. But John Clark says, Privyet, which I think he thought means thank you. Spasiba is thank you. Privyet means hi. So it was Matvei, da-da-da-da. Matvei says, I'm happy to be a Flyer. John Clark says, hi. and you can see Michkov kind of go like, what the fuck? And then goes, Privyet. Hi. Anyway, it's funny. As a language guy, it was funny.
You know what the funny thing was is that we were over at Crossing Broad. We were actually discussing sending Pagan and Craig, the video guy, up to JFK to meet them at the airport. Almost happened. Then the kibosh was put on last minute. It didn't happen. But none of us could be over there for that presser. So we sent Pagan, and and if anybody missed
did Pagan go to the press conference?
He's the guy who asked him about the Phillies.
Oh, I didn't hear that. I totally missed that. Totally missed it.
Who asked Michkov who gave him the Phillies hat, and he said he had a great quote about they're a great team. I want to get to know the players. I want to go watch them play. This is a team I'm going to root for. And then Pagan follows up with, who's your favorite player? And he couldn't remember the name that Jonesy told him, which was Bryce Harper.
That's pretty good. That's good stuff.
Oh, it was so good.
I never told you guys. Where I said, let's really piss someone off on July 1st when it was free agency day. And I remember I texted you the day before, Anthony. I said, I have the Bundy rule of free agency. Never sign with any country or state that begins with CA.
Yeah, those Canadian and California teams are having a hard time right now with signing players. They really are.
Taxes suck.
They really are. It's not.
It's interesting. I think this is maybe like the last thing, unless there's something else that you guys wanted to get to about Michkov. But it is interesting to see the way, and I said that it kind of is a pressure thing. I think the Flyers are smart in the way that they're leaning into it. Again, assuming that you don't put too much pressure and publicly you continue to state he is one guy. Danny Briere said in the press conference that the term savior was thrown around. I don't remember if it was Carchidi or who it was about the idea that Michkov is getting thrown around as being the savior. Michkov didn't really say anything to that extent. It was just I'm here to win. And then Danny kind of went out of his way to say we don't view him as a savior. He's a very good player, but we don't want the expectations on a 19-year-old to be too high. There is a changing landscape in the way that teams market and the way that teams kind of roll out what is perceived to be the red carpet for players. And the Michkov thing is different because I don't think every other team in the league is doing that and is going to the airport to pick up their draft pick and all that and going kind of through what the Flyers social media team did. However, I guess when you put into context everything that happened that led to this moment, you're talking about a player negotiating his own way out of his KHL contract. Because as we all know, KHL teams and NHL teams can't talk. Definitely can't talk. Certainly did not happen. Michkov negotiates his way out of his contract, comes stateside, gets the deal with the Flyers, comes here early. There has been, obviously, the thing around his father passing away. There were all kinds of things floating around about that. There are a lot of things that went into Michkov coming over. And I think that when you put it all together, the Flyers were smart to do what they did, to have the pictures and the video of him, getting together with Jonesy and with Danny. I think that it was a smart play. I get if there are some people who maybe are more like hockey traditionalists who are like, he's just a guy on the team. He's just one player. But for a younger demographic that you're trying to reach out to, it makes all the sense in the world. And listen, I think we all know this, but like Jonesy's understanding of how social media works and his understanding of how to market something from all the time he spent in TV as well as at the radio, I think that you've kind of seen that on full display. I'm not exactly sure that this is how this would have been handled under a previous regime.
Not even just previous regime. You could just say most regimes.
Yeah.
Because most regimes don't have somebody with that kind of background who gets what plays to a fan base, right? So look at that. And Oliver, that is fantastic comment by you saying that Snow the Goalie is the savior of the Flyers. I appreciate it.
As time passes, history will be kind to us.
So, hey, Russ, do you want to get to our 5-star reviews?
I can. Hold on a second. There's a huge scandal that just came out about Canadian teams, not the hockey team. A thing about Canadian soccer team
with the drones.
With the drones, I hadn't seen this.
This is the second.
Oh yeah,
time.
This was yesterday, I think, or the day before.
This is the second time these fuckers have done it. That's my home country. I was born there. They cheat like MRFers. Like it's crazy. They did it. They got caught.
Like how you censored that one. He starts with it, and there's MRFers. Okay.
In case kids are what. But you know what? This is the second time. The men's team got caught last year, but these dummies actually flew the drone right over top of their first opponent's, the team they play first, right over their field. It's like
it's crazy.
And they look over and they see these dumb Canadians.
TSN's reporting. Wow, that's just like that. My buddy just sent me that. I was like, holy shit, that's insane. Okay.
My favorite part of it is that they tried to say it was someone who was not really affiliated with the team, or had like a small affiliation with the team, sure. Not really like, and they're no longer involved or whatever. But like, come give me a break.
That's the second controversial drone that's flown over a place it wasn't supposed to. Allegedly. We're not going to get into that. Not on this show. But if you know, you know. All right. Ant alluded to it. There is a new 5-star review. It had been a while since we got a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts. I think it's because a lot of people now enjoy watching the show live. But the podcast audience continues to grow, which we're always very grateful for. But there is a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts. The platform's taking a while to load it, but here we go. Gentlemen, prepare yourselves. Gird your loins. It's a doozy. It's a very nice one. I'm just waiting. There we go. All right, here we go.
Gird your loins, he said.
Gird your loins. Get them good and girded. And remember, if you haven't done so already, it's time to leave a 5-star review. I don't know what all these people are doing. And by the way, we had 3 polls during the show, and the respondents, we had twice as many respondents as we do likes on the video, which is truly offensive and upsetting in a lot of ways. So if you haven't done so already, it's time. I don't know why this review won't load. I'm actually upset. I can't do this anymore. All right, here we go. I'm pulling it up through an email. So this is from NoelFan89. Listener in Alabama, 5 stars. Love the show. Anytime I'm mowing the lawn in this deep south heat, I fire up the podcast. Bundy is hilarious, Ant is cranky, and Russ is usually right, but don't tell that to Russ. Thank you, NoelFan89.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Ant is cranky. Oh, look at Ant. That would hurt him. That hurt him a little bit. It hurt his soul.
Yeah, the fact that he says that you're usually right is the killer. That's right.
I love it.
You can call me cranky all you want. That's fine.
NoelFan89, though. So this person is also on my struggle bus of we haven't seen a lot of very good Flyers teams. I'm telling you, there's a contingency of us out there.
NoelFan89 means he's rooting for Florida State, which is problematic right there, right? I mean, who roots for Florida State? Come on now.
That's what you think. All right.
Come on.
Anything else that you wanted to get to today, guys? We didn't really talk about the Kolosov, like the latest on the Kolosov front. I don't know if there's anything that you have that you want to get to.
The one thing I can say to that is don't be surprised if you see the Phantoms have a few additions that are Russian-speaking players to try and make him more comfortable. So a lot of what you're hearing out of Russia, I would take with a grain of salt. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's right either. I think that there's still an expectation that he will be here for camp and that they're going to try and make him as comfortable as possible when he comes over. So internally, that's the expectation. So that's the only thing I would throw in on that.
It was an interesting answer that Danny gave, by the way, at the Michkov press conference, because that kind of question came up. No one said Kolosov, but just about like the language barrier and everything. And he talked about how it's important to have guys that can speak the language, that understand. And they were talking about Fedotov and Zamula as being two of the guys that makes sense. So the one thing that I guess, I said this over on my other show that I now do, but like the Kolosov thing has the potential to get ugly in that the Flyers are under no obligation to loan him back to the KHL, to Dynamo Minsk. They're not under any obligation to trade him to another team in the NHL that has an opening. I don't know what the actual deal is. I will stand pretty resolute in just based on the timeline. He thought that there was going to be a chance to play at the NHL level either at the end of last year or that he was going to be in position to compete for the backup job next year. And as he was waiting on his visa, Fedotov came over, got his visa, and was already like suiting up with the Flyers. I have not spoken to Alexei Kolosov, so I could be wrong. But to me, like just based on the timeline, you're going to uproot your life. And when he got to the Phantoms, there weren't, to my knowledge, many or any Russian speakers. It's just a lot. And he was riding the pine behind Cal Peterson, who sucks. That's all I'm saying. So hopefully they'll be able to figure something out. If the Flyers want to, though, they could make it ugly. They could kind of hold him to that deal. They're under no obligation to do anything otherwise. And do they have the ability, if they wanted to loan him back?
Yes, but they would have to agree to do it. It's the Flyers' decision to loan him. Yeah, it's not mutual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
All right. Well, that's great. We wish him the best. And
all right.
Hope everything goes well for him.
That's great. That's what we like. And
not tonight. They're off tonight. They're back tomorrow.
I can watch Olympic soccer.
They're back tomorrow against the Cleveland Guardians. Back home tomorrow night.
Bundy, what are you looking forward to the most about the Olympics? Do you have? Is there actually a summer sport that you actively enjoy in the Summer Olympics?
I like the track and field. I used to like it better when they were all on roids, though. It was just a lot better to watch.
We talking about baseball?
Everything. Just get them all back on it. Let's get the steroid Olympics. It'll be the greatest thing ever. I mean, like I don't know. I played in the Olympics, so I'm a supporter of it. But I like the idea of it being an amateur at one time. I think like with LeBron carrying the flag is just come on. Like give it to someone who LeBron's done everything he can do in life and sport. Like there's probably somebody behind
You mean give it to somebody who like doesn't have a pro league to go play in and get the
pros, or it's a woman that is playing in a league that doesn't make that kind of money, like that. So I agree. Don't know, but, I guess synchronized swimming from X-Tall 7. Yeah, I mean, I try to think what else I like. No, I'm going to be watching. Do
you watch the high dives at all?
They look like a bunch of clowns. Like so far, I mean, they could all. That's South Sudan. That would have been that would have been like the miracle on ice of basketball. I don't care if it was an exhibition game. I was praying to God that upset happened. That would have been the greatest thing ever. 14-point lead at halftime, and then LeBron's like, all right, I guess I'm going to have to turn it on here because we can't lose to South Sudan.
Yeah.
Anyway, but I'll watch it if there's something on. It's good stuff, and I hope
I have.
And do you have a favorite?
Well, it's not that I have a favorite, but I'm rooting hard this year for Allie Wilson, U.S. track team. Delco original from Strathaven High School. I actually covered Allie when I worked at the Delaware County Daily Times. She was. I actually was the track writer for that year. She was. It was her sophomore year in high school. She was my track athlete of the year, and here she is running in the 800, representing the United States. So I will be rooting hard for Allie Wilson in the 800. At the
Great, that's very cool.
I will join you in that, Anthony. Great stuff.
I like the high dives. I would never do it. When you watch those people who do the high dives where they start backwards and they start by jumping backwards where their head goes towards the hard concrete, absolutely not. No. But I enjoy it. It makes no sense to me and how they go so high and the little people make such little splashes. I'm intrigued. I find it very interesting. So By the way, the best backdrop, I think, is the beach volleyball. I don't know if you guys saw it. The video went up. Where beach volleyball is at, it's the Eiffel Tower right behind it. It's like the coolest backdrop. It's neat. So anyway, maybe we'll break down the Olympic Games here next week or something. But a big thank you.
Russ has no idea what the triple Lindy is, Anthony. None.
No, he has no idea.
No idea.
He has no idea what the triple Lindy is.
I'm going to send Greg Louganis to put some respect. You have to put some respect on
the fact that you use the word respect. The fact that you used the word respect was as close as you can ever get to the triple Lindy without knowing what the hell it is.
There you go.
Does that give you any clue?
Greg Louganis could not do the triple Lindy.
That's right.
There's only one man who can, and his name is Thornton Mellon.
Russ has no idea. Russ, it's a movie called
It's Back to School.
Rodney Dangerfield. Yep.
Yeah. I haven't seen it. All right. I know this is surprising. I don't know. Yeah. All right, fine. I guess I'll have to watch it just for the triple Lindy.
That was my college experience.
Just YouTube triple Lindy. You don't need to see the whole movie.
I just Googled it, so I was ready just in case. Yeah. But all right. A big thank you to everybody who tuned into the show live. Guys, do you have any?
I'm surprised you didn't sell the Michkovmania merch today.
I have to say this really quick. We put out a relatively jocular tweet, and apparently it upset some people. I will say this one last time.
Jocular.
Okay? There is no bad blood or rivalry, I think at this point, between us and the guys at PHLY. I have gone on Crossing Broadcast and on my show, and I have said they're doing yeoman's work. I am thrilled for them that they are doing what they're doing. Lord knows, and if we had taken that deal, I don't know how the fuck the three of us would have figured out how to do a daily show about the Flyers. Kudos to those guys. They're doing really well. I put out a jocular tweet from the Snow The Goalie account because they put out a Michkovmania shirt as well, and it uses the Hulkamania font. There's nothing proprietary about it. I put the thing out that we've been selling that shirt for over a year, but apparently it upset somebody over there. The word got back to me. So just to be clear, everybody sell your Michkovmania merch, but we're the ones who own the domain. And if anybody tries to trademark it, you're fucked because we own the domain. That's all I'm saying. We own Michkovmania.com. So, if you want to get your merch, Michkovmania.com, or you can go to shop.snowthegoalie.com. That's all I'm saying. All right. But you can go there because we have the shirts and the hats and the hoodies. Look at Bundy. Looks like he's about. Bundy looks like he's about to die. All right. Okay. I think we're good.
See ya.
All right.
Love you guys.
Anything else you guys need to plug on the way out? Ant, you have a crossed up coming tomorrow?
Crossed up tomorrow, yeah. And
Pennsylvania Recovery Center. Doing great in Center City, guys. We have a great group. Anybody needs help, alcohol or drugs, you can reach out to me at bundyrecovery.com or Facebook, Bundy Recovery. Thanks.
I actually drove past your recovery center the other day. We took the kids to the Museum of Art, and we went right past. And I went, hey, that's where we were just at. We were explaining Chinatown to the kids. It was good. That also happened to be the day that Biden dropped out of the election. And for 45 minutes, I watched all the young people get the notifications on their phone. And 45 minutes later, I watched older people get phone calls. And I watched a 60-something-year-old guy go, my sister just called and said that he dropped out of the race. It was like a full 45 minutes later. It was amazing. It was like the best microcosm of humanity at the Museum of Art. Anyway, you got crossed up. You got the Bundy's Recovery Center, PA Recovery Center. You can join me tomorrow, 8 a.m., The Russ Joy Show over on YouTube. We're going to have a blast. We'll talk more about the Flyers. We'll talk about the Sixers, about the Eagles, everything else. It's going to be insane. Big thank you to everybody who tuned into the show. If you haven't done so already, like the video, share the video, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and do us a favor, seriously. If you tell 2 people in your life about this show, it'll continue to grow. We have some very cool things coming up for the season. We have some conversations to have with the Flyers. I'm very excited about where things can go, and I know these guys are as well. Matvei Michkov is stateside. Travis Konecny has a new contract. We are Snow the Goalie. For Ant, for Bundy, I'm Russ. We'll talk to all of you very soon here on Snow the Goalie, the only Flyers podcast.